Hello there, guys, and welcome back to my channel, to our live reaction and player ratings live stream following Chelsea 0, Manchester City 2 on the opening game, or our opening game of the new Premier League season. This is exactly why I wasn't that happy about playing Man City today, because I knew it was going to end up exactly like this. They would somehow lose, and then everybody would say, yeah, but this is when you should beat City. They didn't have Rodri, so people don't even take the positives that they are to take from this one because, well, we lost and City aren't that great. Well, so are we. Price is streaming on his own thing, RD. My apologies. But you seemingly are not happy because you're like, Chelsea not bad. Bro, Man City didn't even have Rodri. We just have no one of Rodri's quality. So surely that makes our performance look better. I don't know. I don't know. It's just this. It's just one that stings. I can't lie. Like, I'm not going to say we were a better team, but we were certainly not the worst team. But a few minutes in, we make one silly mistake. I don't even know where to start on that goal. We'll talk through it in detail later. And then the second one at the very end, we had chances. Jackson, we could have had penalties. Were we robbed by Anthony Taylor? One, I feel like we were robbed. And the other one where I think we could have been robbed, they never even showed a replay because it was just before halftime. I never saw a replay of it. Maybe any of you did, but I didn't. So I'm not sure. Maybe we were robbed on one. Maybe we were robbed on two. I'm not 100% sure. But as you can tell, ladies and gentlemen, I am joined by my wonderful guest, Adash. Thank you for joining me once again. How do you feel? How do you feel after this game? Were we robbed by Anthony Taylor? Obviously, I'm slightly over-dramatizing it for the title. Like, let's be real here, guys. But were we robbed by Anthony Taylor? What do you make of our performance? Like, some people want to make it sound really bad. And some people, I don't know, take positives from it. I haven't obviously had time to check Twitter to any crazy detail. I'm sure there's going to be some people that probably take too much positives from this. But where do you stand on it?
Yeah, first off, thank you for having me. It's been a while, so glad to be back on the channel. Yeah, for me, I feel like I'm just kind of right in the middle. I think certainly, like you said, weren't the worst team overall, and certainly I feel like as a unit, as a team, we didn't play horribly. But like I can't point to a single player, bar maybe Lavia, who like actually played well, who actually rose up to the level that we would have expected or wanted necessarily. Um, and then obviously with Anthony Taylor, like I saw a replay of the one at the end of the first half with Nkunku,
Yeah.
and that seemed like a stonewall penalty. The replay that I saw on Twitter, so that was at least two of them that I felt like should have been a penalty. Plus,
When you're done,
Kova
basically
handball.
saying your first bit, and I'm speaking again, would you mind trying to find that clip so I can take a look at it?
Yeah, will do.
Obviously, we won't be able to show it for copyright, but just so I can see, so I can talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, overall, things didn't go our way, but we should expect that at this point. It's not a surprise when the bald man is refereeing our games. But overall, it's kind of a weird one. Not sure exactly how to feel about it. I think we need a little bit more evidence to go off of before I conclusively because preseason was kind of a write-off in my opinion, and I went to two of the games. I went to two of the games where we lost where we conceded 4 goals. So overall, my track record wasn't great, but yeah, I think it's just a kind of we played against City. It is what it is. Now take that forward. We need to beat Servette on Thursday. And if we don't do that convincingly, then we're going to have serious questions and serious kind of conflict.
If we don't beat Servette, we're in big trouble already. Although at the same time, I mean, Conference League is good for the size of our squad, but it would be even funnier for the sport directors if we didn't manage Conference League qualification. Then we'd have a 40-man squad for only being in the Premier League. That would be quite funny almost. It's so sad that you have to cry, that kind of funny. Do you know what I mean? I see a lot of people slandering Enzo Fernandez, Kuzi as well. Enzo F needs to leave, guys. The kid doesn't suit the Premier League or the league. I don't know. We'll get into that in detail. We'll talk about the lineup in a minute as well. But yeah, it's just one of those games. Like I don't know how you felt, Adash, and I don't know how everybody watching felt. By the way, shout out everybody watching. Shout out everybody that's tuned in. Hit that like button for me. That helps me spread these streams out to more people. Subscribe if you haven't done that yet. That would be massively appreciated. Yeah, like I didn't feel we played bad. Like in the first half, it was a fairly even game. Neither team had much in terms of clear-cut chances. Obviously, City scored their 1 goal, which, again, we'll talk about it in a minute in terms of who's at fault, who's to blame, or whatever. But it was just a bit of a unfortunate combination of events, really, when you deep it. Fofana's positioning wasn't great, pushed a bit too far out, and Cole shifted across. That gave too much space to Haaland, and Bernardo Silva on the stretch gets the perfect kind of layoff to Haaland, who's then obviously just insane. Like, I thought Cucurella had the ball, and then somehow Haaland, obviously being as big as he is and Cucurella as small as he is, kept the ball, and then we just have a completely useless goalkeeper. Completely useless on that goal, completely useless on the second goal. Now, he did make a couple of decent saves in between that, to be fair, but those good saves don't mean anything if you let two in where I'm like, how have you let this in? Oh, thanks, Adash. I'll take a look at it when you speak again. But yeah, that's the frustrating bit. I didn't feel like we felt bad, and honestly, considering how much of a drastical change in play style we went through from last season to this season, like, I'm not sure about the final game statistics, if we had more possession in total, but in the first half we certainly had more possession. In total, we had just less, so 48% in total, even though we had more expected goals. But what does that buy you, right? But I don't think we played bad. Like, we defended all right for the most part. City didn't have a lot of chances, if we're being honest. And a lot of the chances they did have were either like slightly, somewhat lucky bounces, or obviously at the very end, like a bad punt, then poor defending or poor positioning, really, from Caicedo, and then Cole not stepping out. And then Kovacic just having that one or two of a year shots that somehow goes in. But yeah, on our end, obviously the big Jackson chance, we'll talk about whether, that was a big miss or whether he actually did all right to get as good of an effort away as he did. But yeah, that was a good finish by Haaland for the first goal. No, it was a good finish, absolutely. Don't let me take anything away from Haaland's finish. It was a phenomenal finish, phenomenally smart finish to find that gap between the goalkeeper and Cucurella. But what I just could not comprehend is how Robert Sanchez in that situation goes in with his shoulders in and his arms in. Make yourself wide like any goalkeeper. You can't see me in big now, but make yourself wide like any goalkeeper would. Feet wide, legs wide, arms wide. He did none of that. He went in basically trying to be a mannequin. I don't know what he was doing. Like, he literally gave Haaland the space to chip it through. Unbelievable. The last one, mate, the dude is nearly 2 meters tall. How are you getting beaten at your near post from 30 yards? Okay, 25 yards. Shocking. Absolutely shocking. We have a serious goalkeeping problem. We'll get into that a little bit later. But yeah, I'd ask to come back to you. What did you make of? I know you kind of touched on it already, but in terms of our performance, right? Like, what do you make of a game like this? Because we didn't look drastically inferior to Man City today, I don't think. No, sure, Man City didn't have Rodri, they didn't start Foden. I'm sure they weren't at their very best as well in terms of fitness. They had the most players at the Euros, I think. So 100%. But let's still not forget who we are playing here. And obviously, we are Chelsea, right? And we always want to fight for the title and fight for top four and this and that and this and that. But you got to think of where we've come from. And I think in the grand scheme of things, I think against City, and I know we didn't lose to City at all last season, but our play style has changed completely. To do that with a completely different style of play style and not really look particularly inferior, I was positively surprised by it. I don't know, like maybe I was just very pessimistic going into it, but I didn't expect us to look as okay and as good as we did. I weirdly even thought we'd get a better result maybe than we'd look, if that makes sense, almost a bit like on the Poch. But it was the opposite. We looked better, but got a worse result. Sure, Bobby Fab, you can say, are you kidding? Man City was sleepwalking through that game, didn't break a sweat. But why does it
you can only play who's in front of you?
When we win the game 1-0 against a bad team, you will come on here and say, we aren't good enough, we don't take our chances. Yeah, we won 1-0, but it's not enough. But when City do it, it's like they were sleepwalking through the game and didn't break a sweat. I don't think that's that. I just think we made life difficult for Man City. Now, I'm sure they weren't at their best already, but we aren't at our best either. We'll get into the lineup whether certain decisions about how to set up and certain players to start was in hindsight a good decision or not. We'll get to that. But Adash, will you? I know you said if we don't beat the Sabet, but only focusing on today. Don't you think there are positives to take?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think to me, it seems like we have several more gears to go up, and I don't think this game showed us that we can't go up those gears and we can't reach that potential. But to do that, there needs to be a lot of work in the training ground. There needs to be a lot of changes made, in my opinion, in the way we set up. And I think if those kind of things get implemented over time, let's not forget this is also Maresca's first ever competitive game, where the mindset is completely different to how it is in preseason. Yeah, exactly. And so it's a learning curve for him in terms of how our players react in this kind of situation, as well as him also learning about how our players play, because he's only been here for like 2 months. So I'm willing to grant a little bit more grace. But like I said, there were several things that I would hope to see improved on. Um, Not to say that there weren't any positives, but I don't think there were too many positives, to be honest. I feel like there's definitely a lot of things that need to be changed in the coming weeks.
Fair dues. I mean, hey, it's first of all, it's good that we have that slightly different perspective. I'm sure the chat will be very happy because I've already had people having a go at me for saying positives. Delusion. I mean, Chinako says we prepared the whole season with inverted tiki-taka masala football. I don't know if you meant masala or if it auto-corrected Maresca into masala, and then played a most basic 4-3-1 mid-block first game of the season. I get what you're saying, but also it's Chelsea Football Club. Maresca can't turn up here, play crazy like tiki-taka football, lose 3-0, and then say, well, I did what I did. I do what I do. You know, look at the reaction in this chat already now. Now that we lost 2-0 and really weren't much worse of a team. Yeah, for me, there are positives. And I saw a message up here by Atlantean. He says, you can't seriously say we look better against City in this game compared to the games with Poch last season. No, I'm not even trying to say that. I'm not even sure if that's the debate I'm trying to have, if I'm being perfectly honest. I would take it away from last season because we were such a different kind of team last season. With a manager, first of all, that had experience, with a manager that had a good record against Pep, with a manager who was, if anything, better in those kind of transitional games against better teams. That is what suited Poch. Poch had the problems against the teams who we should be better against on the Maresca, at least. And we changed the playstyle so drastically that I thought and I know people say, oh, we played the basic mid-block anyway, but in terms of the way we played was still very different to the way we played last season. Even if there was moments where you could feel the Poch coming through and they players just try to play a bit too directly for my liking. In particular, Cole Palmer, Enzo Fernandez on a few occasions. But let me bring up the tactics board. I've decided to change it up a little bit, just make things a bit different. Rather than giving these guys squad numbers, the squad number will be their rating, just to make it a bit more visually interesting, I thought. Let's do that. I'm not sure how I'm going to do the subs. Maybe I'm just going to place them up here somewhere. We'll see. But this was kind of the base formation. Now, on the ball is where it became interesting because it was kind of a little bit Palmer shifting inside, Gusto pushing up, but this wasn't always the case. So it's not like we always had this. And then you could say we almost had a bit of this, but that wasn't always the case. It's not like Cucurella stayed. Cucurella, it was almost a bit like this kind of more than anything, which is kind of a bit crazy that we chose to do that against City. And if anything, it worked. But again, I'm talking on the ball. Off the ball, we were certainly very pragmatic, really. I would say you would argue that Enzo then dropped into a midfield three. We kind of had I don't know, it was one like that, kind of a 4-5-1 if you want. Sometimes I guess Savio also dropped in, creating a 5-4-1, but I would say this was more it. I will keep it as a 4-2-3-1 on screen for the time being, just for clarification purposes. But yeah, Adash, coming to you, what did you make of the starting 11? What did you make of the starting 11 when you first saw it? And what did you make of the starting 11 now in hindsight?
I mean, it was definitely interesting. I think the way I saw the lineup was not the way we ended up setting up during the game, if that makes sense. But to be honest, I wouldn't have made too many changes. And even in hindsight, I don't think there's too many changes I would have made going in. There were a lot of like things setup wise that I would have done differently, but I think in terms of like this base group of players, I would be lying if I said I wasn't happy. The bench was definitely interesting to say the least, and certainly the lack of Sterling and other players was also pretty interesting. But I think that was probably the main thing that I gained from the starting lineup.
No, fair dues. On that note, it's actually quite interesting. Why don't I bring up the lineup kind of thing that Chelsea posted before the game? If I'm gonna find it at any point, there we are. So we can look at that bench. I'm not gonna. Maybe I'll bring up that Sterling statement. Maybe we'll do that at the end. But Adash did send me that potential penalty on Nkunku just before half time that we never showed a replay of. I mean, it's still not a replay. It's kind of like a video of the live footage. But in this live footage, it still looks like a Stonewall pen to me, and I cannot believe that wasn't given, and it's an utter disgrace. Oh, I didn't want sound, mate. But anyway, let me bring up quickly this, because, like you said, the bench was interesting in the sense that we had Jurgensen, Badiashile, Tosin, Vega, Dewsbury, Madueke, Mudryk, Neto, so 3 wingers, and Gu, but no Raheem Sterling. Raheem Sterling also released some sort of statement, or his camp rather than he himself. We'll get through that later if we still have the time. But if I bring up the lineup again, like there's just a few questions that I have, and I get it maybe for Man City, but I just don't understand why he chose to play not just one winger that isn't a touchline winger, but 2 of them. Now, sure, on the right-hand side with Palmer, he did have a bit of a solution for that in terms of letting Gusto attack once we had the space to really enter the final third, and then Palmer came a bit more central. But, when we had the ball at the back and the out ball to Palmer was still out wide, there was not a lot of pace. And Nkunku really didn't do a lot other than waiting too long to shoot on multiple occasions. Now, maybe he should have won us a penalty. But yeah, that's another difficult one. I wish the laws were different. I could just show that foul clip and we could just discuss it together. But unfortunately, then I will get copyrighted, and that is not fun. But yeah, having Nkunku and Palmer as the wingers, even when the lineup came out, I was like, I wonder if Jackson will be out wide on Nkunku, because I don't know. I really like Nkunku as a player, but I really struggle with. And that's also why I'm so against signing João Felix, because João Felix to me is a worse version of Nkunku. We discussed it with Euro Expert yesterday. We already have issues with where to play Nkunku. So if you get a worse version of him, how many issues are you going to have there? Because I don't see Nkunku as a winger. I mean, okay, it was one game, so it's not a conclusive, decision or whatever. But I just don't feel like he is a winger. I don't really see him as a striker. For me, it would have made more sense against City to play him up front than it would have on the wing for sure. I think in these kind of games, I just genuinely don't think Nkunku should start. I know it sounds stupid and crazy, but I don't think you'd want him as one of the 8s, or we didn't play as in preseason 2 clear 8s today, but still, I don't think that's him. But it's also not as a winger. Like, I don't know, man. So that was my issue. I think, honestly, I probably would have started Sterling if I'm honest, just because of how poor Mudryk was in preseason for the most part. Now, Madueke is who I feel almost the worst for. I don't know if he's going to end up getting sold or what's happening, but he played the 3rd most minutes of any attacker in preseason, and now didn't get a single minute in the first game of the season, which is kind of crazy. Now, I get it. Obviously, it's because Palmer wasn't there at the beginning of preseason. That's why Madueke played in the right wing, but to not be used at all. But the problem is you wouldn't want either Madueke or Palmer on the other side, like a Sterling and Neto. They can both play both sides. You don't really do that with either Palmer or Madueke. So I guess if you want to have the 3 midfielders of Caicedo, Enzo, and Lavia all on the team, you don't have that many more options. But I still would have felt that either Sterling or even Mudryk, if Pedro Neto wasn't fit to start, would have been a better solution of the left-hand side than to have 2 wingers that aren't wingers. I don't know. Like, ladies and gentlemen, please let me know in the chat what you think of that. And Adash, I'll get to you on that question. Do you not think in hindsight that was a bit of a bad decision? On top of that, it can also be said Jackson and Palmer only played 45 minutes of preseason in preparation for this. Jackson mostly due to injury that he picked up on international duty in June, and Palmer obviously coming back late from the Euros and making it to the final with England. Because also the longer the game went on, the worse we got, which also is partly, Palmer wasn't maybe not fully up to speed in terms of full fitness. Same goes for Jackson, because, like someone said here, the subs killed the game. And I kind of agree. We'll get into it about who got subbed off, who got subbed on and stuff like that later. But especially when Lavia got subbed off, I was like, what are you doing? Like, Lavia looked like he had maybe a small limp and he was going off, but maybe it was one of those Bukayo Saka type limps where it's not actually limping, but just like making things look a bit more dramatic. Because him and Cucurella for me were by far our best players, but Lavia kind of to stand out. And once you took him off and brought Dewsbury Hall on, but we just looked awful. And every extra minute I see of Dewsbury Hall, the more I am baffled that we ever decided to sign him. Baffling signing, baffling. But Adash, in terms of the wingers, maybe Jackson and Palmer rushing them a bit to a start today. But would you have been happy if we started you up front? But then again, why not go with Cook up front today? I think Cook up front would have made more sense than him in any other position today. But yeah, what do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's what I was talking about earlier when I mentioned like the setup. I think the way I think the midfield and our wingers were profiled and played today, I think did not fit at all. And I don't think I really, really hope it doesn't continue because, like I said, I mean, starting at least Palmer at the end, he just started to kind of drift centrally, at the end, and if Gusto is overlapping significantly as maybe we would expect, then I think it can still work having Palmer off the right wing if he's able to drift in and carry the ball. But I think Nkunku is just not a left winger. I just don't think he can play there, unfortunately. And like I would rather have just started Pedro Neto instead of Nkunku from the left wing, starting from the off, or even
Pedro Neto, after like only joining 4 days ago, probably wasn't quite ready to play to start, maybe, and I understand that decision. But even then, like, we had 3 other wingers on the pitch, on the bench, and one that we didn't even include in the squad. Like, you didn't have to play a not winger on the wing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, kind of, if we're thinking about like future games, I think the easiest way to resolve this issue is either push Enzo back into either Lavia or Caicedo's position, presumably Caicedo, and then move Nkunku centrally, and then play someone like Pedro Neto out wide. I think that instantly would massively upgrade our team just because the players are more comfortable where they are. I thought Enzo had a stinking game, but it was also a case of like, that's not where he shines, so I can't expect him to shine in the role that he's supposed to, and the responsibilities that he had. And I also, like you said, I mean, we'll get into it. I think the Pedro Neto sub, just bringing him on, was a good move. It kind of livened the game for 5 to 10 minutes, but I think the other subs were kind of catastrophic and killed off the game and any kind of momentum that we had.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And that whole Enzo thing is an interesting one anyway, because Maresca only used him in this position, really. I mean, obviously, towards the end of the game, when Dewsbury Hall came on for Lavia, then Enzo dropped deeper. But until then, Enzo hadn't played as one of the sixes or a 6 in Maresca's system yet. So I don't really know. But yeah, no, I agree with you. And I'm sure also this was a case of, because we played against Man City, I do not think that we're going to see it very often that all of Lavia, Caicedo, and Enzo start games. I don't think that will happen that often. If we do that, we also don't have anyone near enough midfielders to have midfield depth for the whole season, by the way, if all 3 of these start on every game like that, where we do not, after loaning out Ubuchuku, we do not have midfield capacity to do that, especially when Renato Vega, who's sure can be seen as a DM, but he's also the direct left backup as well, so he can't be backup to both at the same time.
Well, there's a certain midfielder who is staying at a London hotel training with the under-21s who we could potentially use, but of course we choose not to. But
by the way, I absolutely loved it that the Matthew Harding lower, when we were drawing and when we were losing, they were singing Gallagher's name the whole time. Absolutely love that. But yeah, it's a weird one because like a lot of people are having a go at Enzo today. But if there was one pass today and one pass that could and maybe should have got us a goal, it was an outrageously good pass by said Enzo Fernandez. Now, sure, otherwise he was pretty good. Pretty poor, sorry. But that pass was the one standout moment in our game, in my opinion. Like the one technical standout one where I was like, that's a world-class team. Not that's a world-class, but that's only world-class teams can do something like that. Why did I love that? Because I think it's utterly disgraceful how Conor Gallagher was handled, and I think it's very good that the fans make that very clear that they might hate Gallagher and everything to do with him, and they might even be willing to take a player that we don't need in our squad purely to get rid of Conor Gallagher, willing to sign João Felix purely to get rid of him. I don't think that's good. So anyway, but yeah, no, he didn't do much other than that. Absolutely. But yeah, that pass from Enzo was good. Yeah. It's a weird one. Let's get into the player rating, shall we, Adash? And let's start with Robert Sanchez, because my God, we are in big, big trouble. We are in big, big trouble because I don't rate Philip Jørgensen particularly highly either. And maybe Jørgensen gets the Conference League qualifier game against Servette on Thursday. Maybe he does well, but obviously almost incomparable of an opponent between Servette and Man City. But Sanchez today, he made, 3 saves. He conceded 2 goals, obviously. His passing was 21 out of 26. Long balls, 2 out of 6. Why did he try 6? I thought Maresca subs his goalies off if they play long balls. Why not? I wish he did. Yeah, I think he looked poor on the first goal. I think he looked poor on the second goal. I think the second goal was also in a way started by him just being too slow and too lethargic and pragmatic in passing out when he just rolled it over to Fofana, who was then pressed by a City player and had no other option but to punt it. If Sanchez just uses his brain a bit properly, doesn't unnecessarily play the ball to Fofana under pressure, then we might be able to play our way out and not concede the silly goal. Now, Do we get an equalizer anyway? Maybe no, maybe not, probably not. But still would have looked better than losing 2-0. I'm giving Sanchez. Does it let me no, it only lets me do 2. So it's gonna be a straight number. Just understand, guys, it's gonna be out of 10. Oh, I can't do a 0.5, I'm just realizing. I can do a dot. Shit. Didn't realize that. Well, here we are. We might have to change to the other lineup graphic anyway if we need to do 0.5.
Maybe you can do it out of 100.
Yeah, but it's only going to be
instead of out
two
of 10.
digits is the problem.
Well, nobody's going to get 100, so you could just do like instead of what would be a 6.5 would be a 65.
You're saying out of 100.
Yeah. So
yeah, but what when we do it gets too crazy because imagine what am I going to give someone a 99? Nah, I can't do it. I get what you mean. I appreciate you. Nah, I'm not sure because what am I going to give him now? Like a 30? That looks dumb, doesn't it?
I was going to give him a 0 either way.
You was going to give him a 0?
Nah, I would probably go for a 1.
You're going to go 1, but a 1 looks a bit silly on the goalkeeper. I'm going to tell me what you think about Sanchez. I'm going to get the other lineup sheet ready so we can do this a bit more logically.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of Sanchez, the thing with Sanchez is that he does this against any opposition. Like it's Man City, so people might be like, "Oh, it's Man City," but if he starts the next game on Thursday, he's gonna do the same thing against Servette because that's just the kind of player he has, like that bozo gene. He's just not a good player. He just he doesn't have his mind in the game at all times, and that leads to very costly turnovers, as we saw in preseason, and we've also seen today. And I think, even like you said, I think the way he approached the first goal, I think like as a former goalkeeper, I used to play goalkeeper, so I know when you rush out, you keep your body tight so you have more momentum, but then you immediately have to widen your stance to make yourself as big as possible. He just rushes out and then doesn't do the second part, which is the most important part of actually blocking the ball.
Exactly.
I just don't understand what he does in that sense. Is also, like you said, I think he's the main one at fault. He's one of the main ones at fault for the second goal. Just the way he was lethargically passing the ball completely gave Fofana no chance of passing the ball out from the back again, which is why he had to clear it, which went to Kova, and then he did whatever he did. So I would go pretty low, and I think it's pretty telling that Jorgensen, our new signing, can't even kind of get the starting job off of Sanchez. I mean, Petrovic, I feel like on merit deserves the starting job and on quality, but it's clear that that's probably not going to happen. But the fact that even Jorgensen can't do that, I think, is pretty telling as to his quality level. But I feel like he can't be as bad as Sanchez. Surely not. And I'm willing to give him more time as a starter before I make that conclusion as to whether he's better or worse than Sanchez.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I'm not. If you said it already, my apologies. What was your rating for Sanchez in the end?
I'll go for. Are we doing 0.5s now?
Yes.
I'll go for a 1.5. I feel like a 1 might be a little bit too low.
Okay. I was going to give him a 2, but because we're not doing 0.75, I'm just going to go along with your 1.5. I was thinking, do I give him a 2.5 to give it a flat 2? But I don't think he deserves a 2.5. Does he? Nah, I think he does. I think a 2 overall is probably fair because he will have worse games. For sure, because he will have games where he has these bozo moments without also making a couple of decent mistakes, and I need to leave room for worse ratings when that is justified. So that's what I'm gonna.
Fair enough.
Yeah, let's go to another question I have for you, just quickly. What did you make of the decision of Enzo Fernandez being captain?
Interesting decision. I mean, I'm not even going to lie. I think after the entire kind of incident that happened in preseason, my opinion on Enzo kind of soured a little bit, and he managed to recover that back, but not fully. And I definitely don't think it's a great look to have him as the captain. I think, sure, as a leader, he is one, and I think he is a leader, and I think that shows in games. But
I agree.
I'm not necessarily convinced that he's the right person to be the captain, especially right now. I mean, you have somebody who I believe even captained the team last year in Colwell,
Yeah,
at least.
To be fair, that day was, even though the result didn't suggest it, I think that was a worst performance all of last season, that United game. It was just United was so bad they didn't punish us. But really, we should have conceded 7 goals that game. So make of that what you will, that Kovacic was captain in that specific game. But I kind of agree. I think after everything that happened recently, I don't think it's a smart move to make Enzo the captain. I get it to some extent, obviously, if you're not going to include Sterling even in the squad. Who are your options? Who are realistically your options? It's kind of like Enzo, maybe. I don't even think Enzo should be an option in this scenario at the moment. But who else are you picking? Nkunku, maybe. Colwell, like you said. I don't think anyone else should even be mentioned, because I'm scared if it's not Enzo, I'm scared they'd give it to fucking Sanchez. So the less talked about that, the better. Let's move on to Levi Colwell, shall we? Some people I've seen blame him for that first goal. I don't really think so. I think it was more Fofana's bad positioning forced Colwell to shift across a little bit, and because Bernardo Silva had no one on him. Now, sure, what Colwell didn't help, and I get that, but because Bernardo Silva was so alone, if he doesn't close him at all either, then Bernardo Silva, when he gets the ball, just turns, scores himself. So, but because Levi Colwell had to leave Haaland to go closer to Bernardo Silva, who Fofana somehow just walked away from for absolutely no reason. Haaland then had too much space, and then Colwell couldn't get back in time. So I wouldn't really blame him that drastically for the goal. I think there was moments where he defended well early in the game when City had a bit of a transition moment. He blocked a shot from, I think, also Bernardo at the near post. Did that all right. I thought he had another couple of decent blocks. I'm going to give Levi a 6. When I look at his stats, 98% passing accuracy, only misplaced 1. That's strong. That was a long ball as well, because he has 3 out of 4 long balls. 0 out of 1 tackle, but make of that what you will. He had a last man tackle. He had a block. He had 4 clearances. He had 2 headed clearances. He had 2 interceptions, and he also had 2 out of 3 ground duels, which is pretty good. So yeah, I'll give him a 6. Adash, what would you give Colwell?
I think I'll maybe go a little bit lower. I don't think it's fair to necessarily put all the blame on Fofana, because I think the main issue was just the gap between Fofana and Colwell on that goal was just way too much. I think the majority of the blame does lie on Fofana, but I think Colwell needs to be able to react to that, especially if you're not playing
in that situation is the problem, because once Fofana leaves Bernardo Silva, Colwell doesn't have enough time to close down Bernardo Silva doesn't have enough time to close him down. So if he stays with Haaland, sure, then Haaland can get the ball, but then Bernardo Silva has so much space that he can just turn around and shoot himself. So I think from that moment that Fofana shifts wide, from that moment, Colwell is stuck in a catch-22 situation where no matter what he does, it will be bad. You see what I mean?
Yeah, that's true as well. I mean, yeah.
But hey, I'm not trying to change your rating. Set the rating that you want, my bro. What rating would you give?
I just saw the quote
lower,
from
5,
Haaland.
5.5. What are you thinking?
I just saw the quote from Haaland about Cucurella. Sorry.
What did he say?
He said, "Cucurella is a funny man. Last season he asked for my shirt. This summer he sings a song about me."
But Cucurella is a funny man, and I'm glad that Haaland took it this way, because I don't think that this was anything malicious from Cucurella. And I don't know, people will say, "Oh, no, look at the goal Haaland scored, especially in the 1-on-1, essentially against Cucurella." But yeah, sorry, what rating are you giving Colwell, bro?
I would probably go for a 5. I didn't think it was a great performance. I do think he got better as the game went on. I think started off probably a little bit shaky, but in the second half, I think played a little bit better. So credit where credit is due, but I don't think, definitely not one of his best games. Kind of just agreed with everything you said. So yeah, not going to rehash it.
Interesting. I just read what you sent me like 3 minutes ago. We will get to that later if we have the time, because that is very interesting. All right. 5.5 overall then, with my 6 and your 5. I think it's okay still. Moving on to Wesley Fofana. I didn't think he had a great start to the game. Like I said, I think if there is one mainly at fault for the first goal, I think it's probably him, but it's a combination of obviously multiple players. His passing accuracy, nowhere near as good as Colwell, compared to 98%, yet 88%, misplaced 7 passes. 5 of those were long balls, because he had only 1 out of 6 accurate long balls. Had a tackle. Also, his ground duels, 1 out of 6. Shocking. Obviously, part of that is because out of our 2 centre backs, Fofana is the guy that's supposed to, or Cobalt does it too and did it too, but I think tactically, I think maybe it just happened to be where the ball is. But I think tactically, Wesley is more instructed to be aggressive, which is also partly where the ground duel stats of 1 out of 6 comes from. It's not just being bad, but it doesn't look great. There was moments in the second half where I was quickly almost reminded, oh, Fofana is actually good. There was 2 moments that impressed me. One was when he ended up in a sprinting duel against Jeremy Doku and was faster. I was like, what the fuck? How's that happened? Because obviously we all knew Fofana was fast before all of his injuries, but in preseason he looked slow. So you can never know with all these serious knee injuries, people lose pace, right? So I thought maybe he lost some pace. Judging by that moment of keeping up or even being quicker than Jeremy Doku, that's not something to worry about. There was another moment where I thought another few moments where I thought he defended really, really well. But obviously, even though I think Sanchez put him in an uncomfortable situation, when you punt the ball, don't punt it to the one area where there's only Mateo Kovacic and no Chelsea player inside for 20 yards. Because that's essentially what cost us the goal. Because Kovacic got the ball in such a moment where we tried to play out from the back, so we were in transition moving forward. Like the wingers were wide, not central to be there to relieve the pressure. They was like, okay, let's go. And then Fofana just didn't get his ball far enough, put it in an area where there was no one. And then, sure, Caicedo didn't look great, but Caicedo was already a bit right and then didn't really have much time to turn around and still stop Kovacic. Enzo was too far left, so Kovacic literally got the ball in the area where there was no Chelsea player anywhere to be seen. Now, should we criticize potentially some of the positioning where that was? Maybe. City's winger had a proper field day today. I disagree. I mean, until Doku had that little dribble at the end, first Cucurella turned him off completely, so much so that Doku switched sides to play on the other side because he got so little joy on the other side, in my opinion. But anyway, so yeah, we can sure talk about the positioning, about where everybody was when Fofana hit that long ball. But I still think, first and foremost, like Fofana should see where is no one. And I'm sure he didn't aim to play it there, but, you need to make sure you don't play it somewhere where there's only an opponent and no other player anywhere near. So that's just not great. So with all of that said, I will probably give Fofana... there was still a couple of good moments. Well, because you gave Cobalt a 5, I'm going to give Fofana a 4.5. Otherwise, I probably would have given him a 5, but I think he was worse than Cobalt overall, so therefore I've got to give him a little less. But maybe you'll give him a 5 again and drags it back up. We'll see. What did you make of Fofana today?
I think I'm also going to go for 4.5. I think, like you said, I think the first goal, I think, is just his fault. I think it is what it is. Just expect a center back to have a little bit more awareness than that. But we'll also say that it's this is his first competitive game in I think like 400 days or something like that. I don't know if that's. I saw that on Twitter somewhere or something.
Sounds about right when you think about when he got injured. Wasn't it April when he got injured at United and hasn't played since until now?
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, yeah, I kind of, and like you said, I think the kind of physical traits that he showed today were, I think, the most promising signs, where it shows that he can come back and recover fully from all of these injuries that he's had, and he hasn't lost that step which he had. And now it's just kind of about getting that game time, and as he grows, I have no kind of doubt that he will show and be able to kind of achieve his potential, hopefully, especially with Colo, because that's a really, really solid center back partnership, and I think it's just about like shoring that up. Sorry?
So it could or should be, I guess.
Yeah, like exactly.
A solid defensive back line. Now, first of all, if you're going to call yourself H, but be clearly a Chelsea fan, doesn't that kind of confuse itself? I agree with Max P. I thought Gallagher was... Imagining today the way we played, Gallagher played instead of Enzo. We would have been a significantly better team, would have pressed better, would have won the ball more, would have potentially created more but higher chances for ourselves. But anyway, and this is, by the way, from my perspective, this is no slander on Enzo Fernandez. Now, I know he wasn't that great today, but I just don't think he should be playing in this position today. And how did we come to this position? Because we bought 3 midfielders, 2 of them for over 100 million and 1 of them for over 60 million, even though he was only 19 at the time. So now you have 3 players who you clearly value unbelievably highly, but don't have enough positions for them on the pitch to play all of them at the same time. So some players are going to have to play somewhat out of position. So brilliant. Let's go with Cucurella. Now, I thought Cucurella was, after Romeo Lavia, our best player today. Now, could he have done maybe a tad better on that goal by Haaland? Maybe. But I think the physical difference between the two of them is so drastic that I don't even think you can have much of a go at Cucurella for it, if I'm being honest. I thought in particular in the first half, Cucurella was just doing everyone's job at the same time. He was doing his own left-back job, I thought, well, even if some people in the chat seem to think their wingers ran as ragged, which I don't personally agree with, but fair dues. I thought he was helping out the centre-backs dramatically with blocks and chasing players when they were cutting inside. I thought he was helping in midfield with the ball retention, with the build-up. I thought he was just very, very good. And I will not have any Cucurella slander. I will go quite high. I will give him an 8 because I just thought as an individual, I thought he was really good. Maybe people will think, it's too high. We lost the game. I don't care. I think as an individual, Cucurella, you know what? I'll change it slightly. 8 is maybe ever so slightly too high. I'm saying 7.5. I'm saying 7.5, but still, I thought he was very, very good. How can you still not be his biggest fan? If that doesn't scream agenda, I don't know what does. But yeah, to be fair, you did say yourself he's put the work in over the last few months. No, he absolutely has. He got cooked by Savio many times. I disagree. But yeah, there you go. Adaj, do you agree that he got cooked by Savio or anybody else?
Definitely not. I think it's definitely a really big stretch to say he got cooked. Like maybe he got beat a couple of times, but I think overall he had a very solid game. I think, like you said, just forcing Doku to shift to the other side where granted Doku did have a lot more joy on that left-hand flank or their left side once he kind of switched. But that's also his preferred position. I think that's where he gets the most productivity. But I think Cucurella was able to really lock him down, which I think was a really big positive. And I think, I don't think there was any major negatives from his performance, so can't really fault him too much. Maybe going forward a little bit, if Nkunku had a little bit more support, if we were playing in this I
think that's another thing to mention as well. Cucurella did the whole left-hand side by himself. That was because there was no one tracking back to help him. No Lavia, no Nkunku, no one was doing that because Lavia was busy midfield and Nkunku didn't even know what tracking back is spelt like. Cucurella was doing the whole thing on his own. City gave the ball to their wingers a lot, but I just don't think they got the ball into the box dangerously at all. And when he did, and Cucurella always made sure he closed him enough that the cross wouldn't be an easy cross and a simple cross, and so that it pretty much always was a pretty comfortable clearance for Kovacic at the near post in the end when the cross did get past Cucurella. What rating would you give good old Cucurella today, man?
I would also go for a 7.5. I think an 8 is a little bit too high, but I think a 7 it doesn't necessarily do him justice. I think it was a pretty decently above average performance for him. And if he continued performing this way, I think we're going to be pretty happy with the left back situation for the rest of the season. Let me put it that way.
For sure. He had an 89% passing accuracy as well, which I think is good for a left back. 2 out of 2 tackles, 5 out of 7 ground duels, compared to Fofana's 1 out of 6. Okay, on the ball, maybe less as good. I suppose he had 3 crosses. Don't remember 3, but sure. Which he didn't complete any of those. But he did still have 4 passes into the final third, which for being a defensive left back like he was today, I think is still pretty good going. If I move over to Malagusta on the other side, now I love Malagusta, one of my favorite players in our team. I don't think he had a great game today. He gave the ball away too easily. His crossing was poor. And, for Cucurella, I don't necessarily pay too much attention to his crossing because I know it's not one of his strengths, even though he played an absolute peach of a cross in the Euros final to beat England. But for us, he hasn't really been a good crosser ever. And Gusto has too many bad touches, too many bad passes. Now, he recovered quite often himself as well, but still. Passing was okay, 87% again, 27 out of 31. But 0 out of 4 crosses, 2 out of 4 tackles is okay, 5 out of 11 ground duels. You could see how many he was in, but that was also because he ran high up the pitch, then ran back, and then often also contested against their midfielders, not just against their wingers. But still under 50%. It's never great. It's not awful if you win 5 in a game. It's not awful. But if you lose another 6, it's still not great. I would probably give Gusto 5.5, 5. I'm thinking you could convince me into a normal 5 if that's what you're thinking. But tell me what you're thinking first.
Yeah, I think for me, probably a little bit lower. I would go for the 5. I think definitely not one of his best games. And I think it was pretty telling the fact that when Doku switched sides, he had a lot more joy and he was able to take on, and he kind of gained a lot more confidence, especially at the end where he just kind of completely cooked Gusto and kind of cut it to the 6-yard line. Yeah. But overall, I just think the way he played and the position that he was in, I think could have done a lot more and should have done a lot more, especially in that kind of attacking third. with the kind of chances that he had. But yeah, I would say I would probably go with the 5. I don't think it was an outrageously bad game. I think some people might be overdoing it a little bit. And I think there's no like cause for concern whatsoever with Gusto. I think people who are saying that are kind of out of their minds, to be honest. But I feel like, yeah, definitely not one of his better games.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I do agree. Let's move up the pitch then. And I guess I felt that Lavia was a tad more defensive maybe than Caicedo, but also I was just so impressed by him that I want to focus on him first and foremost. He had a 97% pass completion. When I've checked during the game at some point, it was actually 100% at the time. Now he only missed 1 out of 39. Had an accurate long ball as well, 1 out of 3 tackles, 3 out of 6 ground duels. He was phenomenal. Now I still think that Lavia is defensively not quite as good as people tried to tell me when we signed him and while he was injured the whole time. Still good, but not as good as people tried to tell me, but on the ball. And when I say on the ball, I don't just mean like just when our team is in possession. The way he moves, the way he understands the game, the way he creates angles to be able to pass to open up other passing lanes to other players, the way he's strong, the way he's quick to choose a pass forward, which Caicedo or even an Enzo sometimes don't do. I'm a big fan of Romeo Lavia. And Romeo Lavia, as weird as that sounds, I think will, in a weird way, cause Chelsea problems this season because he's almost too good. Because we have 2 under 100 million plus pound midfielders in Caicedo and Enzo. And Lavia outshone them both drastically today. Drastically. Now we get Cucurella 7.5. People will maybe call me crazy. We lost. I don't care. I'm giving Lavia a 9. Don't forget who this guy is. He's 20 years old and only played 45 minutes of football all of last season. And now comes in against City and does that. Outrageous, in my opinion. Outrageous. And I mean, I know you said you're struggling to take as many positives maybe as maybe I am. But I think if there is one positive that we can probably all agree on, I think it's Romeo Lavia.
Yeah, 100%. I think if you had given me Enzo and Caicedo's prices and you asked me to guess Lavia's prices, I would have guessed it would be 50 million over what we spent for Enzo and Caicedo, not 50 million less. I think he was comfortably the best of the 3. I don't think it was even close. Yeah. And I think, like you said, I think he will be causing problems because long term, I don't see all 3 of them playing together in this system and being successful. And if we have to drop one of them, and if it ends up being Lavia, then I think the team overall suffers because we're dropping the best midfielder. If we drop one of the other 2, then someone's gonna kick their toys out of the pram because you can't bench 100 million pound midfielder. But that's a conversation for a different day. I think Lavia deserves all of his flowers and all of the praise he gets today. I think he was exceptional. I think he continued the form that he was showing in preseason and even elevated it to a different level, I thought, today. I think just oozed quality. I think maybe one thing that maybe I felt, and I don't know if this is a managerial instruction or just his natural style of play, was at times, especially when City were kind of attacking us on the transition, I felt Lavia went a little bit too deep. Like you said, he kind of shifted into that central center back almost, where you'd want him a little bit higher, especially with how high up Enzo was. It felt like at times Caicedo was almost exposed, and then if somebody dribbled past him, there was a gap in midfield, which I felt Lavia could be the one to cover. But that's kind of a nitpicky issue.
We'll need more games to see if that's tactical or a player problem. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, exactly. But that would be the only kind of negative mark on what I thought was an otherwise exceptional performance. I wouldn't, if we had won the game, I would have honestly gone for a 9. But I feel like just with the overall kind of nature of the performance, I would probably go a little bit lower. I would go for an 8, I think, or an 8.5.
Do 8 because then we give it an overall 8.5.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that's fair enough for a great performance. And I think if just to kind of tie a bow on this point, I think if he's the one who gets dropped, I think there need to be serious questions about, like, I'm kind of more on the fence of, I'm not sure if Sterling's decision was like an upstairs decision or Enzo Maresca's decision, where most people seem to be thinking that it's an upstairs decision. But if Lavia gets benched after this, I have no questions about who's making the real calls.
Yeah, no, that is a whole separate issue, and we will get to that when discussing Raheem Sterling towards the end. Moving on from Romeo Lavia, our best player, we move on to Moises Caicedo, who I don't think was bad today. I loved that one tackle. Was it in the first half still? Was it early in the second half? I think it was still in the first half. And he just clattered 2 City players at once. I think it was close to half time, actually. And I'm not even sure. And it ended basically with, I can't remember who it was. Well, it was 2 City players on the floor, and then Savio was on the floor somewhere else, and he then had to come off. By the way, also, we didn't touch on it. Cucurella was subbed off. It looked like he only had a cramp, but he was subbed off still instantly. So I think and I hope he's not injured, but we can't be 1,000% sure of this right now. But yeah, going back to Caicedo, yeah, there was this moment where I was like, I absolutely love Caicedo. I clattered just 2 of them. I thought in general his tackling today wasn't that bad. The passing was good as well, 45 for 49 passes, also had even more touches than Lavia did. An accurate cross he had as well. Okay, accurate long balls, but still. The ground duels, though, 2 out of 6. Now, good old Dimitar in our group chat, Mr. Negative. Already said, Caicedo got spun again for this goal. I don't think in this scenario you can say Caicedo got spun. I think Caicedo got caught in a position by a bad ball from his teammate. I think that where Kovacic got the ball, I don't think Caicedo had much of a chance. Don't forget who Kovacic is. Surely as Chelsea fans, we should know that Kovacic is one of the best dribblers you'll find in that area of the pitch. You don't just run to Kovacic to take the ball off him. That's not how it works. Even N'Golo Kante can't just do that to someone like Matteo Kovacic, let alone Caicedo, right? But overall, I still don't think it was fantastic. It's a difficult one for me to rate today. Adash, why don't you go first? Because I'm kind of struggling what rating to give him, maybe, unless you are struggling as well.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird one. I don't think he was at his best by a long stretch for me. I think when you mentioned the clattering into 2 players, I thought what was far more impressive was maybe 10 seconds earlier in that stretch of play where it was a 2v2 and it was Doku dribbling at Caicedo, and he just positioned himself perfectly to be able to intercept the pass and slow down that transition, because otherwise Haaland would have been in and he would have definitely scored. So I thought that was a really good kind of highlight of his game. But he did get dribble past a lot. I think in particular for the second goal, I think Caicedo and Enzo were extremely poor. They just didn't show enough effort to get the ball off of Kovacic. Fair enough, it is Kovacic. He's really good at dribbling, but I want to see a little bit more effort from our players, especially it's 1-0 end of the game. I want to see that kind of going the extra yard, like maybe a Gallagher would at that stage, or maybe somebody else who had fresher legs would. But at the end of the day, I don't think it was a shocking performance, but definitely not close to his greatest. I'm between a 5 and a 6, so I might just go with a 5.5. As kind of, just going in between the 2 in terms of a rating.
That's probably roughly the area I was thinking as well. I'm like, do I give him a 6? But probably just ever so slightly below. So I'll probably go along with a 5.5. It's a tough one for me. A few people in the chat seem to be thinking similar things as well. H. said, okay-ish, 6 is fine by me. And okay-ish, 2 for you. Well, maybe choose a different sport to watch. But anyway, yeah. I think 5.5 is fine. I think a 5.5 is fine, if I'm honest. So we move on. And we move on to, according to this chat, most certainly the biggest talking point of this game in terms of Chelsea. Enzo Fernandez, what do I do with you? What do I do with you? And then 87% pass completion, which, to be honest, in his position isn't really that bad. And it certainly got better as the game went on. He had 5 out of 6 long balls, which is really strong. And he had a few good long balls as well. Also, his ground duels, by the way, 4 out of 7, better than the others. Lavia had 50%, Enzo has 57%, and Caicedo had, what was it, 2 out of 6 or whatever it was. So not he was better in that sense, but obviously he was in a different area of the pitch. So it's not fully comparable. Absolutely. And please don't think that I am fully comparing it, because I just don't think Enzo was great. There was a few just really uncharacteristic misplaced passes where I'm like, I don't know. I accept if Jackson makes that kind of bad pass, or I don't know, Gallagher last season, but not Enzo Fernandez. Do you know what I mean? The potential goal opportunity where Jackson laid it off to him, I honestly don't know how much more Enzo should have really done. There was 3 defenders and the goalkeeper in front of him, and he was 6 yards from goal. What was he going to do? Because he's so close to goal, he can't exactly take another touch and turn or whatever. Realistically, he's going to get the ball taken off him or blocked again. and he tried to shoot. Oh, sure, he can aim high and whatever, but then he's probably going to sky it in that situation, and you're all laughing at him. But my biggest issue with him was in the attacking third was when he just constantly had bad touches. Like the amount of bad touches when he tried to control crosses, even one of the potential penalties, in my opinion, we should have had. Probably is a penalty if Enzo's touch is better. But because his touch is so bad, the ball bounced away so far, I think that's probably why the ref didn't give the penalty. Now, and because he's Anthony Taylor and he hates us. But, he also still has to find his own justifications for things, doesn't he? So, yeah, Enzo, I'd probably give him like a 4 today. Do you think that's still too high? I mean, some people in the chat probably reckon it's still too high. Varna, interestingly, wants to give him a 6, which I'm like, okay. Maybe, no, I think a 4 is fair. I think that especially the touches. But I also do want to still give it a bit of an asterisk where I'm like, I just don't think Enzo should be playing here. And maybe that's also why his pass numbers went up as the game went on, because obviously once Savio got taken off, Enzo moved deeper. But yeah, in this higher position, especially like if we're playing against Wolves, say next week, or against Servette on Thursday, if you then play Enzo as one of the 8s, maybe that you can do that. But when you're already, and we essentially today took one attacker out of it today to be a bit more pragmatic, and then you still left Enzo as one of the somewhat attacking players, I just don't think he's anyone near good enough as an attacker in that area. I just really don't. Maybe I can give him a 5, but Adash, first tell me what you think, and then maybe that changes my mind.
I was going to go even lower. I think I was going to go closer to a 3, because to me, I don't think the touches are excusable because of his position. I think it's the same thing that I would say.
Touches are not excusable. I agree. Just maybe there's ever so slightly less passing accuracy is excusable.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's the same thing as when back when we had back in the good old days when we had Timo Werner, and people would say, well, he's losing the ball because he was on the left wing, and if we played him in striker, everything would be fine. And that was complete horse crap. But I think this is similarly not excusable. I think it was just a poor game all around. And I also think one of the other issues that he had today was just the pressing. He was trying to run, but the way he was doing it was just completely off. I think it made it completely pointless. It would either leave us with one less midfielder when City were attacking, or he would just not do it in spaces that he was supposed to, leaving player open. So if Nkunku and Jackson, there was one time in particular where Nkunku and Jackson pressed the defender and the goalkeeper back, but Enzo didn't cover the extra man. And so they were able to play out, which kind of made the entire pressing from all the other players around them completely pointless. And I will also say, kind of not a defense, but he's playing in a new position and he is the captain. And I'm sure that comes with added responsibility and pressure. So I'm sure that didn't help his performance and help him kind of ease in and settle into the new system, if that makes sense. But yeah, I think definitely don't want to see Enzo playing the same way. And like you said, I think even if with the same personnel, if Enzo was just playing deeper and allowing kind of space for potentially Nkunku and Palmer to drift inside a little bit more, I think then things might have been a little bit better. But the fact that he still held
it's almost then you need a left back like Chilwell to have the left back provide width. But
exactly,
he decided to banish Chilwell, which I don't even disagree with, because I don't think Chilwell's that good. He can't stay fit, and I don't think he suits the system the way we want to play. But if you're going to play with a winger on the left who doesn't stay out wide, then you'd probably be better off with Chilwell than with Cucurella behind it, because all it meant is that we just didn't have a left side until Neto came on, and that's also pointless. But sorry, I changed the topic completely. Did you give in the end Enzo a 3 or a 3.5, bro?
I'll give him a 3.
Okay, because I was thinking maybe I'll raise it to a 4.5, because maybe I feel like maybe we're just, I don't know, piling up on him a little bit. But hey, if you're giving him a 3, even if I go up to a 4.5, it doesn't change that much. So we'll give him a 3.5. We'll give him 3.5. That's what we do. Let's move on to Cole Palmer. I don't know. I don't want to be too harsh on Cole Palmer, but I also don't want to sit here and say, someone in the chat said much earlier, it's like Palmer was isolated, worrying. And I get you saying that, but Cole Palmer only had 45 minutes with this manager and a week odd just over with the team since returning from the Euros. Obviously, he had holidays after. he's not going to be at 100%. He's not at his sharpest. Now, sure, you're going to say he knows the manager. But first of all, I'm sure the manager does things slightly differently in the Premier League compared to what he did in Man City's academy. But also, like I say, he only had 45 minutes of football to prepare. Everybody always think about it, how everybody always says how important preseason is. So I would count that into the situation. But was he good? No. He did have 2, maybe 3 outrageous through balls that unfortunately his teammates didn't do anything with. So they were good. But he also had some bad ones when he tried to play too quick and they got intercepted, when he kind of underhitted in one occasion for Jackson. But he was still not terrible overall. He had an 87% pass completion, 1 out of 3 dribbles. He's at least completed 3 out of 5 crosses, which is actually a pretty good stat. 1 out of 4 long balls, not that amazing, but still 2 out of 2 tackles, 4 out of 9 ground duels, which for an attacker I don't think is that bad. Still to win 4. Not many attackers win 4 ground duels a game. Because I want to be lenient, because he's only had 45 minutes essentially as preparation, and because I think the type of player he is when playing on the wing in this system, but also against the team that we played against, I think he's not going to be able to show his full capacity. But also, if people were expecting Palmer to have the similar season again, you need to ready yourself for that not happening. Like, even if Poch was still the manager, I don't think Palmer would again hit those numbers because it was just so outrageous last season. Now, he would probably get better numbers if Poch stayed than he will this season, but it's just a different system, right? And yeah, sure, it's going to maybe cost some individuals, but it's going to help other individuals, and as collective, it should hopefully make us better. But obviously, only time will tell. And well, we didn't lose to City last season, and we did this season. But then again, we didn't play City in the first game last season. So, because I think people forget that. And sure, City weren't at their best, but we have a new manager with a completely different style of play. We are, in theory, we should never be worse than we were today, because it should at least be to some extent constant improvement from here on out under the new manager. It should be. And again, don't forget, we have a young team. It's not like we have a team of 33-year-olds that come, January are going to be old and tired. That shouldn't be the case either. So, yeah, I'll give him a 5. I don't think I can give him higher than a 5, if I'm honest. What would you give him, Adash?
I think I'm going exactly the same for a 5. I think some people might have been overdoing it a little bit, kind of discussing Palmer and saying, oh, he's going to be terrible this season. I don't think that's the case. And I think there's certainly a lot of other factors, like the fact that he spent the whole summer next to the Euros, but got maybe I don't know exactly how many, but maybe 60 minutes overall. And then also the fact that he only had 45 minutes with us in preseason, didn't really get to play and work with the system beforehand. And I also thought he had those couple of great passes. I think there was one to Neto that almost came off. That would have been a really, really great one. There was also the one which he hit to Jackson and then Enzo, and then they kind of collided into each other. But I thought that was an incredible pass. But yeah, overall, definitely not one of his best games. He was kind of a little bit quiet. And I think as time went on, he kind of abandoned that touchline winger role per se, and kind of started to drift a little bit more centrally. And I think when he did that, he didn't play as bad, because on the one hand, he was kind of maybe getting a little bit more fatigued as time went on because he wasn't fully fit. But I think he was also starting to get on the ball a little bit more. So that's one where, again, you need to see and give it a little bit more time to decide whether that's a permanent issue and place of concern, or if that's just kind of an issue with betting into the system. So I'm willing to give that a little bit more time, but definitely expecting more from Palmer on a regular basis for the season. So kind of the opposite of what we said with Cucurella, where if this is how he's going to be performing all season, then it's going to start to become an issue. But I'm hopeful and confident, at least for now, that that's not going to be the case.
Yeah, fair dues. I think a 5 is fair. I think generally people just obviously I only see a few certain people in the chat. I can't see every message, and obviously this is only a very small minority within the fan base. But I still think also reactions give Gusto a 3. Again, his passing was poor and he got done a couple of times by Doku, but that doesn't give you a 3. To get a 3, you need to be really, really bad. In my opinion, I don't Gusto wasn't good, but again, let's not forget who we played against. We played against the best team in the world. At least, if you think that's Real Madrid, at least the best team in the country. And we are nowhere near that. Nowhere near. I just think people have too high expectations of what they think they will get from Chelsea this season. Now, I'm not saying we can't get a top 4. I predicted us to get top 4. Not a true, fully honest prediction. It's more like trying to manifest it a little bit. But I think it's possible. But don't be losing your mind if we aren't like amazing against Man City after 1 month of preparation and a completely different style of manager. And also after a preseason, which the owners ruined completely for us again because we spent more time on planes than on the training pitch. So, yeah, I just think we need to calm it down a little bit. I'm honestly a little bit surprised by a lot of the negativity. I'm not sure if that's only on my channel or if that's Chelsea fans specifically or generally. I don't know. We move over to Christopher Nkunku. I honestly thought he was in a way worse than Palmer because he had so many more moments. He was played in so many more times because of obviously how we played, in particular in the first half. Essentially having nobody on the left. City also didn't commit any of their players to the left. So we did a lot of our playing down the right with Palmer, with Gusto, Caicedo, obviously Lavia, Enzo. And then in those moments that we had the space and time, we shifted it across to Nkunku and he had space. Now, I still think that he should have won us a penalty. And if the referee had eyeballs and if VAR had balls, then it would have been a penalty. And I look at it now, he had a 100% pass completion with 24 out of 24, which I didn't see coming, if I'm honest. But he had 0 successful dribbles. Yeah, okay, he had 3 out of 3 tackles, which is actually quite impressive. 3 out of 9 ground duels. It's not great, but I'm not going to lose my mind over that for an attacker. But to be honest, I don't even want to have too much of a go at Nkunku. It's more like, just don't play him at left winger anymore. I said this the whole time. Some people said, do it. I said, don't. I don't want to say, I told you so. It's just, today at least, it didn't work. It didn't work. And you could tell that by him getting subbed off, He could have taken off Enzo, or at the time already, he could have taken off Lavia and pushed Enzo deeper, put Nkunku more central to put Pedro Neto on the wing. But he didn't do that. He took Nkunku straight off. He was just too slow in taking his shots, too slow in taking decisions. A bit unfortunate. Maybe it was fair actually to give him the same rating as Palmer, but he was more frustrated because he had better moments to do something. So maybe out of that, I would maybe give 4.5, but I'll see what Adash says to make my mind up completely. What do you think? And what did you think of Nkunku, bro?
Yeah, I think I would go for 4. I think he was fairly significantly worse than Palmer. And again, not completely his fault. I think just the way he plays, I think much better suits a central position. And I think he's not as good taking on defenders one-on-one, but he is really good at running past defenders and kind of taking them on, if that makes sense. Like kind of on a counterattack, which is what he did a lot at Leipzig. So it's not all necessarily his fault, but I would say apart from the penalty, which he should have gotten for us, I don't think there were too many positives. That should have been a penalty, so it's kind of like he could have kind of like assisted in quotations like a goal. And he like created a chance that way, which we didn't get eventually. But apart from that, didn't really have too much. He was pretty invisible.
Our wrong decision by a referee impacts 2 ratings for our players, because Palmer probably would have taken a penalty. Palmer would have scored the penalty, so Palmer's rating would have been higher, and we would have said Nkunku won a penalty, so his rating would have been higher as well. And all because
then it would have been,
doesn't have eyes. Brilliant.
And then it would have been 1-1, so it probably would have changed everybody's ratings if the entire complexion of the game had changed.
I would have probably assumed even if we make it 1-1, we'd probably still concede another one and lose 2-1. But
you never know. But I would probably go for the 4, just on the lower end. I think he was pretty invisible. Again, not all his fault though. So definitely not lose. And by the way, just because I haven't been on the channel for a while, if anybody thinks João Felix is going to solve the problems that Nkunku is facing, you can get right in the bin. I don't even want to elaborate on that because it should be so clearly apparent. But if for some reason you don't think that, then just
like
get in the
Gallagher bin. Would solve that issue that we have today more than João Felix does. Again, I know we played City today, and very few games will be like the ones against City. But then I say that. Have you ever seen Man City park the bus the way they did today? Have you ever seen that ever in your life? I haven't. It almost felt like a reverse of like when we played City on the Conte, where City kind of just, especially in the first half, had less of the ball, sat back, and then countered when they could, scored, and we had the ball the whole time, couldn't score. That was literally, it felt like a bit of an opposite of Conte's good season against City. Obviously, the season after, he was a disgrace against City and didn't even try to win. But honestly, I've never seen City and any Pep Guardiola team defend like that. Never. Like, they literally had every man behind the ball, every player. I've never seen it before in my life. So yeah, I that's also partly why I'm like looking at the positives. But yeah, there you go. Let's go and finish off the starting 11 with Nicholas Jackson. And Adash, I would like for you to go first. Now, before you do that, I'm going to put some pressure on you by telling you what someone in the chat said here. I just want to see, Florin said, I just want to see Jackson score. Anything over 2 is too much. So what are you giving Jackson, bro?
I'm not going to give him lower than a 2.
More than 2, so don't worry.
Yeah, I'm giving him more than a 2, but it's not that much. I had a lot of hope for Jackson coming into this season, and I'm not going to take anything from this game, to be honest, because it is City. But over the next couple of games, I want to see more development from last season. If it's the same old Jackson that we're getting as last season, then I think the frustration is going to start to build really, really quickly. I guess I'll give him my rating first and then justify it. So I think it's a little bit tough. I think I'm gonna go for a 4, maybe. Yeah, I think I'll go for a 4. I think just the main thing here is that it's just the same old issues. I think that offside really, really got on my nerves because that's such a small, like kind of tiny issue where it's just that kind of lapse in concentration. If you have a striker who's 100% switched on all the time, then you need to be onside for the rebound. But that's a moment where his just mind turns off, and so he drifts offside.
He didn't even think of it. And if I'm honest, bro, like as a not professional footballer, I understand. If I'm stood there in the box and I see Cole Palmer has the ball over there, and I see Cole Palmer is kind of loading up his shot, I'm also looking at him shooting rather than me being onside. But that's why I'm not a professional footballer. Jackson should be making sure he's personally not offside when that situation happens. But at the same time,
exactly.
I also like to. It wasn't far off. It was like a bit annoying, but also a bit unlucky, if we're being totally honest, because there wasn't much in. That was like what, a couple of inches, not more than that, I would say. But I agree, they should be better at it. But I don't like. I think it was close enough that I'm not going to lose my mind over it. But I get what you're saying.
Yeah, and also, yeah, there were just certain other chances where you just expect him to do a little bit better. Test the keeper. There was one chance where he dribbled off the left and then just hit it straight into the defender. Where I'm like, try to test the keeper. Try to get it.
So bad. Like it's
exactly
like he kicked the ground.
He teamed it.
There was no power on the shot at all.
Exactly. I mean, yeah. So those are the situations where really just expect him to do better. I think his hold-up play today was very underrated, as it's been in the past with those kind of missed chances and opportunities that he had. I think he did well there. There was one specific moment where he had Akanji on his back, turned him, and then made a really nice through pass for Nkunku, which I thought was great. But again, all these kind of things are really good, but those should be the finishing touches on a good striker. If that's all you're leaning off of, then I think it's difficult to be able to justify these kind of performances for 2 or 3 straight seasons. And that's why I'm personally not opposed to bringing in a new striker, like potentially like an Osimhen or something. But yeah, I think overall, just not a great performance. But I'm also not going to read into it too much, just because it is City. But if he continues it into the future,
of all, it's City. But I think the other important factor to mention is that he just recovered from an injury, played one half, and now started straight away. I think that should be remembered. That he was injured since June, couldn't do preseason, basically none of it, trained not at all or alone throughout the whole tour. And then literally only for the Inter game a week ago, got 45 minutes and trained since. So like maybe in hindsight, Maresca said that thinking maybe I shouldn't have started Jackson. Maybe in hindsight he thinks he should have put Nkunku up front or just Guy. Although when Guy came on, I think he touched the ball like twice. So that didn't exactly help and work either. But yeah, I would probably go along with your 4, to be honest. I think, could I give him a 5? Because I think some of it is misfortune. I think I could, but I think a 4 is more fair. Like you touched on those moments, like when he actually had a good run into the box and could have shot earlier, but runs across the whole thing. And I'm like, okay, he's looking for the gap. He's looking for the gap. And it's fine if you look for it, if you find it. But first of all, he didn't find it and he put no power on it. Like that was just poor. There was this other moment where he tried to step over and then I think it was Guardiola from behind him caught up to him, which sure, I mean, his first game again, only 45 minutes in his legs, no preseason. So I get it, but these kind of moments and plus the offside moment, of course, they should just be a little bit better. My biggest annoyance is just still, especially like City parking the bus towards the end as well. Obviously, at the very end, Gu came on, who is a bit taller. But for these kind of moments and like lesser opposition, Servette, Wolves, a lot of them will be parking the bus and we will need to cross the ball. And Jackson will never be a good... Like, Jackson's a great player. And Jackson, in my opinion, can be a very good striker that scores you a lot of goals and gets you 20 goals a season. Not every season, but can score 20 goals in a season. Considering he scored 14 already last season, and that is in a season where it felt like he missed everything, and he still scored 14. That is proof for it. But he's never going to be good in the air. He's never going to get you 10 headed goals a season. He's just never going to be that. So if we're going to have to cross a lot, we need to figure something out. Whether that something is Osimhen or someone else or something else, I don't know. But yeah, that's frustrating. But yeah, I think a 4 is all right. Like someone was saying, if anything is over, 2 is too much. I think it's a bit harsh. Max P, at least there's at least someone, kind of backing Jackson a little bit. Here comes the usual Jackson 8. I think you've mistaken the channel because there's very few players I just pile up on. One of them is Robert Sanchez. Otherwise, there's quite a few. Raheem Sterling, I guess. Oh, I didn't give him. Did we forget to give him Kunku a rating? What did you?
I swear we did.
What did you?
I gave him a 4. I think we both agreed on a 4. Didn't we?
Maybe I think it was a 4.5. Maybe because I think I said I'll give him ever so just slightly maybe less than Nkunku, so kind of than Palmer. I don't know if it deleted itself or if I deleted it. My apologies. But yeah, I think it's a 4 for Jackson is still all right. Let's look at our subs, shall we? Someone said, can we give a rating for the ref? It's pretty simple. We get a clown emoji, obviously. But yeah, Pedro Neto. I'm going to put his full name just to, I don't know, just Neto itself sounds a bit boring. Obviously, he made his debut, 58 minutes. He came on, so he played pretty much half an hour. Looked very lively in the first 10 minutes, and then Dewsbury Hall came on and killed everything. So, Pedro Neto, as a sub, I'm just going to give him a 5. I don't think I can give him a 6. I know he was lively, but being lively, I don't think is quite enough. Yeah, I said 5 Palmer. Yeah, no, I did. But I didn't Google rating. I wasn't sure. But yeah, gone, Adash. What did you make of Pedro Neto? What would you give him? I thought he looked lively and quick and everything, but just other than one decent cross, which Enzo headed and then Nkunku crossed back in, and then Lavia headed back in, and then Jackson obviously had the one chance, 1-on-1 with the keeper. I feel like we haven't actually spoken about that, Adash, that huge chance by Jackson. Just to quickly go back to it, what did you make of that? Because obviously, he hits it at the goalkeeper from 3 yards, which is obviously poor. But he was also at the same time pulled back, where I'm like, well, you gave a free kick against Chelsea doing exactly the same thing against Akanji. So why is being pulled back not a foul against our striker? Just wondering. I'm not saying that should have been a penalty, but I also don't think that other thing should have been a foul. So, eye for an eye, I suppose. But because he was pulled back like that, it's almost like he got too good a connection to the ball. If he just kind of like glimpsed the ball with his foot, he probably like makes it bobble in one of the corners, but he almost got too much of a connection on it and put it straight at Edison, but also not high enough to put it over Edison. But what did you make of that chance? Like, is that a chance where you're having a go at him for missing? Because obviously he missed from 3 yards, so that's not great. But there was also a little bit of context.
Yeah, exactly. I think from first glance, I got a little bit heated because I thought he should have scored. But then once I saw the kind of contact and the kind of way he was pulled back, I think that kind of justified it a little bit. But still, kind of, you expect a striker of a decent level to score, or to kind of at least test the keeper a little bit more. Even if it kind of got saved or was cleared off the line, you just want to try to aim it not straight at the keeper. And it wasn't just straight at the keeper.
That's the
it wasn't
problem.
even
I don't
like
think there was much aiming going on. That was trying.
Yeah.
I need to get connect with this ball somehow while I'm being pulled back, and then it just went where it went. I don't think it was a case of he aimed at the goalkeeper.
Yeah, but I agree. I think, probably not giving him any blame, but you're happy if that goes in for sure.
Yeah, of
But
course.
I don't think it's a one where you like that's his fault necessarily.
Yeah, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. To take it back to Pedro Neto, man, what would you give him?
I think I would give him a 6. Felt he was a little bit more lively than some of the other players we had that we gave certain ratings to, just because I think he had that one chance where he almost got the ball in the far post. There were a couple other opportunities where he was just kind of taking on Rico Lewis, and I think that kind of positivity, at least until then, if the rest of the team had carried that momentum, I think we could have potentially scored a goal. Um, but then some of the other subs kind of ruined the momentum, which I don't think is necessarily all his fault because he saw the ball a lot for the first 10 minutes until he came on, but then after that, I didn't really see him on the ball too much or too
Yeah.
long. So, and not all of that is like
Shock.
completely
As
up
soon
to
as
him.
Dewsbury Hall came on. I feel bad for him, right? Overall, you give him a 6, I give him a 5, 5.5. I move on to Dewsbury Hall. That was the second kind of set of subs we brought on. Gyu for Jackson. Maybe we should also, for me to not be too mean, we should also not give Dewsbury Hall a rating. But Gyu, I mean, let me quickly look. How often did he touch the ball? 6 times. 6 times. And he had 3 accurate passes out of 4, and that's it. So, yeah. But Kieran Dewsbury Hall, also the last one was Vega coming in for Cucurella at the end. I don't want to pile in on you, but I said it earlier. Every minute more that I see of him playing football, I'm like, you are terrible. You're slow. Your touch is bad. Your decision making is bad. The way your socks are annoys me. The way that you have kind of haircut that's supposed to be a mullet, but then you don't have a mullet at the back, that annoys me. Also, why did he come on for Lavia? That annoys me. Like, I don't know if Lavia had some sort of small issue. He looked, like I said earlier, it looked like he had a small limp, but in this game, if you decide, let me take Lavia off and not Enzo, what is the manager doing? Like, we'll get to the manager rating later. But as soon as that double sub happened, and I'm not going to blame it on Q, I'm not solely going to blame on Dewsbury Hall as well. Don't get me wrong, please. But matter of fact is, we did nothing, absolutely nothing once Dewsbury Hall had come on. Like, we were chasing a game, and all we did was concede a second goal and didn't even get close to scoring again. It was diabolical, really. I mean, I guess we had one nearly moment when we were 2-0 down already, but by then it kind of didn't even matter. But yeah, I'm not a fan of Dewsbury Hall, and purely the fact that he didn't start it. I know we had the 3 big man midfielders, but Dewsbury Hall's one benefit into being signed was that we're playing that we got a manager who plays a very specific style of football, and he is the player that knows that manager. Played a full season under him, won the championship under him with Leicester. But even in the first game, he didn't make the starting 11. So when on earth will he make the starting 11? When? Tell me when. Never. Like, Conference League, fucking brilliant. So I needed to pay 30 million for a Conference League player, as if it couldn't have been Carnage or Komeka. You're really telling me that. Absolute piss take. The amount of stupid signings we make just pisses me off. And I hate being so mean on him because it's not Dewsbury Hall's fault, is it? It's not. But he just shouldn't be at a top 6 Premier League club. Just watch him. Just watch him. And maybe he will still prove me wrong. And in a way, I hope he does. No, not just in a way. I hope he does. Because I hope every player at Chelsea is just great. But my God, I am so disappointed so far. It's unbelievable. Yeah, we're not going to give ratings to these guys, but do you have much to say on Dewsbury Hall? Do you think I'm being too harsh? And like Max P said, the subs itself, obviously, we'll get to a manager rating after, but especially this one, Dewsbury Hall for Lavia, dropping Enzo Deeper, having Dewsbury Hall in the defender. My God, that ruined us.
Yeah, I mean, I think if anything, you're being too harsh on Dewsbury Hall himself and being a little bit too light on the actual structure that is the cause of him being at this club.
Oh, no.
Because
I've never been too light on that, but, I don't want to get demonetized.
Yeah. I mean, I think like, I don't know if you guys know Twitter account CFC Paris Part. He and I follow the academy, and he said that there isn't an under 16 player at Cobham right now who couldn't do exactly what Kieran and Dewsbury Hall does, and I
1,000%
genuinely
agree.
couldn't agree. Yeah, I mean, like, and it's not even that much of a stretch to be saying that. I think that says a lot. First of all, about the way we run the club nowadays, but then also about the player himself. I think, yeah, it was his substitution himself that kind of just brought the tempo all the way down in the game. And honestly, like you said, I think it was just the entire signing was completely pointless. Today didn't offer anything going forward or defensively either. Um, so I'm not sure what's going to happen with him. I don't know if it's possible that Enzo Maresca sticks with him because he's a known, trusted kind of player. Um, or it could be the case that he's being sold next year in the summer. We're looking for a replacement because he's just not cut up to the quality. I think that's not a very unlikely scenario. I think it's very possible that next year we look to sell Dewsbury Hall on anyways because he's just not up to the
I'll
standards
wait
that
for
we
him to
have.
retire the under 21s and not be allowed to go in pre-season.
Yeah.
And the manager just say, yeah, I want to keep all 30 players, but some of them need minutes and they need to... We'll get into a couple
Enzo,
of points for Maresca in a minute as well. Bloody hell.
my kind of prediction for the end of the season is that by the end of the season, either one of Enzo or Caicedo are not going to be happy with the amount of minutes that they're playing. And so if you have that itself, I can't even imagine how Dewsbury Hall's going to be A, feeling, or B, how much he's actually going to be playing during the season, which I think is just going to be an issue. Hey, it is what it is, though. I mean, he's here. I'm going to support him. I don't want him to fail like you, but
I don't want him to
yeah,
fail either. Don't get me wrong. But
sorry, I
I
meant
just
like you
know
don't
that he
want him
does.
to fail. Sorry, I meant you don't want him to fail either. Sorry, that came out wrong.
Yeah, I hear.
Yeah, but I'm not as optimistic on his outlook and future at the club, to be honest.
Yeah, neither am I. And neither am I, my friend. But yeah, let's get to Enzo Maresca, shall we? Where do I put him? I think it would be quite
With
fair to
Enzo,
put him with Sanchez, just because he made him number one goalkeeper. Well, I still, but by the way, firmly believe that if Maresca was allowed to have Kepa on preseason, that Kepa would be our number one goalkeeper right now, and that Maresca would have chosen Kepa over Sanchez 10 times out of 10. 100%. But anyway, what do I give Maresca? It's a tricky one today because I think he didn't get the lineup spot on. I just think the winger setup just wasn't it. I think the subs were also not it. But two things need to be considered. First of all, we had a terrible preseason in terms of, like I said, more time on planes than on a training pitch. Never going to work. Never ever. I wonder if the owners will ever learn. Probably not, though. Do you know what I mean? But also, it was his
hey,
first
I'm not
game.
complaining.
It was his first game in the top flight ever. So, yeah. With that said, I'll give him a 6. What about you, Adash? What were you going to say?
Ooh, that's a little bit high for me. I would probably go for a 5, just because. And the 5 is kind of more. I'm looking at this game in isolation. It's not. I'm not going Maresca out or anything. I think if you did that, nothing that happened in this game was going to change your mind. But I just think you have to give credit where credit is due, as we did for some of the players like Lavia and Cucurella. But I think Maresca, in terms of the setup, just unfortunately didn't get it right today. But I think the more lasting impression that everybody's going to have is whether he sticks with this system and with this kind of setup and profiling of players. Um, I think he got that entire like 3 behind Jackson. If you say, I think he got the way they played completely wrong. And then I think the bigger thing was not making substitutions to adapt that, and the substitutions that he did make just kind of killed the game off. So that's another piece of like in-game management where I'm looking for a little bit more from him. But it is his first game, so it's not like I would probably, if this was Poch in like the back end of last season, I'm probably going for something lower, like a 4. But
Yeah.
I'm almost
No, for sure.
bumping
And
it up.
obviously that plays a
Yeah,
part, right? Like that it's his first game in the Prem,
exactly.
first game with a big team, first game with this team, changing everything that
Exactly.
Poch put into this team, trying to get it out of them again. That's why I went for a 6. Now I'm 100% in agreement with you. If this same thing, if we play City again, also let's to make it even more fair, if we played City at home on the last game of the season, and he did these things, I would be furious. But because it's his first game, I'm obviously be lenient, right? Like it's his first game. And I know I did the opposite for Dewsbury Hall. But again, like Adash said, it's not about the Dewsbury Hall as an individual. It's more about how stupid the decision is to sign him while forcing Gallagher out when Gallagher is 10 times as good a player. Like it just makes no sense. And again, we're getting near we don't even get much more money for Gallagher than we sold Dewsbury Hall for. That's the worst thing. If we signed Dewsbury Hall,
and we're using all of that money to sign Felix.
Vega, right? Like Vega costs 40 million euros. If we signed Dewsbury Hall for that kind of money, no problem. It's fine. But 30 mil for that? Nah, get in the bin. Quickly, Adash, what was your final rating for Maresca? Did you say 5 or even lower than that?
5. I said 5.
Fair dues. That gives us a 5.5 overall. I don't think that's that bad, if I'm being perfectly honest. I don't think that's that bad. I need to quickly actually download here what you sent me, so I can actually bring this up on screen after that. I quickly want to go over to Pice's Twitter. Shout out Pice to get a few post-match quotes up. First of all, Haaland said, Cucurella is a funny man. Last season he asked for my shirt. Now he sings a song about me. Like I said earlier, I'm glad Haaland is taking it like this. Maresca was then also speaking about Carney Chukwuemeka. He says, Carney's a very good player, but because of some injuries in the past, I think it's important he plays 30 or 35 games in a row. Is he going to play that for us? I'm not sure. So what are you telling us? Are you telling us that you want to loan him or that you want to sell him? I want to know. Anyway, also on Sterling, which we're going to get into in a minute, I want all 30 players, but there is not space for all of them, so some have to leave. Again, very interesting. Very interesting. We also see this here, we had more XG in the end, which is also, like, again, XG doesn't mean everything, but you can't tell me we played awfully if we had more XG. Again, we didn't take our chances and we defended badly on 2 occasions. Oops. But still, don't be acting like as if we were just terrible, because that's just not the reality. Jeremy Mikel is back at it. So he's furious on beIN Sports. Says that we need to start bringing in big players and characters. Nothing against him, but singles out Dewsbury Hall as a signing that doesn't help us. Says that he loves the club and we will become a mediocre team the longer we accept this. 100%. I've been saying this for a year and a half. Apparently, Desars is not 100%. Supposedly, he also had this hernia operation before preseason. Don't know. Chile has been ill. Don't lie to me and pretend that this is why Chilwell wasn't in the squad. Don't lie to me. And Carney was a technical decision. And then also Kovacic. I don't score many. And when I do, I do want to celebrate, but I have huge respect for Chelsea. I spent 5 years here. But I think what's arguably more relevant, where is it? So, I'm not scrolling through the whole game by Pice. I'm going to try to find the quotes after that. Let me just quickly upload this picture here so we can look at it together. I guess. I mean, this is something else to bring up. I think I'm pretty quick, and I'm surprised that Tom spoke like this about this incident. For me, and I know the still frame looks crazy, but I don't actually think that's a penalty. I don't know about you. And I know people can say, but what about that Germany penalty against Denmark? But it was so close of where Gusto hit the ball. And I know Kovacic maybe shouldn't have the ball at their hand in that position, but still he shouldn't have the hand in that position. But it's too close to be a pen. Do you think that as well, or is this a pen for you?
I feel like it is a pen, and especially I felt like kind of the opposite, where I think the video makes it look almost worse than the still frame, because it's the arm movement, where the arm for me moves outwards. Shout out Ollie, as usual.
But I think he's moving it outwards to get away from the ball, and then the ball hits it anyway, I think. But
I think that movement in and of itself is unnatural. It's not like a natural movement, per se. So if that causes you to hit the ball, no matter what the circumstances, I feel like that should be given a penalty. But I don't think that's as
close distance of where the ball was struck from makes a difference.
That's also true, which is why I don't
think rules certainly say that the distance makes a difference, but it's always difficult, because they aren't consistent on it. Like I said, I give you that example of the Germany penalty against Denmark in the Euros, where it's just like hit the thumb of his hand on a cross, even though the cross wasn't far away from him either. But it was still further than this. But yeah, I get what you're saying. The reason why I've got something up the screen so we can bring this up. Okay, it doesn't matter anyway. So CFC news page, which is obviously his name,
Nathan Gissing.
Yes, Nathan Gissing, my man. He says, Raheem Sterling's camp, let me actually get rid of my logo up here quickly so you can read this. Raheem Sterling's camp did not release a standalone statement. It's now come to our attention that they responded with a comment to a Daily Mail article. With rumors circulating of an exclusion late last week, the camp directed media to the club, who neither confirmed or denied the exclusion. The camp has no way of dictating timing of a story. The Daily Mail ran the story as soon as they saw Sterling was absent from the team sheet. A player not being selected for a match does not need justification. Sterling's camp is asking for clarity and discussion around his future, which up to this point has not taken place. Sterling has a good relationship with Maresca. So this is kind of what we're on about here. So obviously Sterling wasn't in the squad. Then all of a sudden there was this statement by kind of Sterling's camp supposedly, which essentially said, yeah, he's been returned 2 weeks early from preseason for preseason just to work hard. I don't know, to do whatever. Has a good relationship, blah blah. Had a decent preseason, and now we're looking for clarity on our future. Now, on the one hand, whatever this detailed scenario is, the one thing I disagree with is potentially releasing that before the game. But now, according to this by Nathan Gissing, it wasn't actually their camp releasing that. It was like their camp spoke to the Daily Mail about something else beforehand. And then the Daily Mail chose to run this, what the camp said to the Daily Mail, just before the game once Sterling wasn't in the squad. So it's, as usual, the media playing people, especially people of color. Isn't that interesting? But in a way, I still rate that they said something, because like this, it just makes it very clear. No, I'm not a dickhead. No, I'm not willing to be on the bench. No, I'm not willing to, I don't know, I'm not causing issues. I have a good relationship with everybody. I just want to know what's happening. And I wish Gallagher did, in his camp, did something like that so that the club couldn't paint him as the villain. That's the only thing. Well, handball is handball, offside is offside. Well, I mean, I don't make the rules, but the rules certainly don't agree with this statement. So, what can I say? Certainly, handball is not just handball. It's not how football works. But yeah, on this Sterling situation, what do you make of it? What do you make of selling Sterling? It's so weird because I think, and I know I was very critical of Sterling many times, but obviously now Thiago Silva is left. So now that, in a way, keeping Sterling is even more important. Sure, you can argue, releasing these statements shows that he's not a great leader, blah, blah. But again, we just learned that the statement wasn't quite this way. But could that also be a brief through Nathan Gissing? I know him, but I don't know what he's been told. But obviously, Sterling's wages are so big, so high, that getting rid of him would make a lot of sense and would potentially also allow us to potentially sign Osimhen, which I don't think is going to happen while we have someone like Sterling and Lukaku on the books on over 300k a week. So it's a tricky one, but if whether it was Maresca's decision or the sport directors or owners' decision that he wasn't in the squad, he's clearly not being favoured. Like, we had 3 wingers on the bench and Sterling wasn't one of those 3. It's crazy. It's genuinely crazy. But the crazy thing about all of that is that we played a person at left wing who isn't very good at left wing. So I'm like, I'd rather you just play Sterling than someone who's not a left winger. Do you know what I mean? I'm just saying. But yeah, Adash, where do you stand on the Raheem Sterling situation?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm not Sterling's biggest fan. I'll come out and admit it. I'll make a poster about it. I'm not going to shy away from that fact. But I think, and I also think, just to kind of on like the entire like player and market situation, I think if you're going to sell him, this is the last summer you can sell him before he reaches that point where it's just too old. You don't get that return on your investment, and it's worth it to just have that kind of experience. I think if you're going to sell him, you want to sell him now. And I also think in some cases, like, I think having experience is important, but it's not as important as some people say. I think the blend of experience and leadership is much, much more important, which I think people like Thiago Silva had, whereas maybe it's possible that Raheem Sterling does not have that as much. Yeah. So I would be fine with selling him. And honestly, like you, I 100% rate the move from his camp's kind of end. I think this makes it seem a lot more fair, and especially what Nathan said that you pulled up. At first, it was kind of like, okay, now I get it. I get what you're saying, but why are you saying it now? But the fact that it was just the media twisting his words completely and twisting the timing of his words, and
in particular, yeah, exactly.
And it was also just like the actual like words itself, because they're acting like this was a response to him not being in the squad, but this wasn't, because at the time when they made the statement, Sterling didn't even know if he was going to be in the squad or not. So they twisted it that way as well, which I think was pretty unfair to be painting on him. And kind of all of that just to say, I would be okay with selling him, but I don't think they've been treating this entire situation right. I think if he was going to go, we should have had that as a clear stance and like transfer position a while ago.
Told him that, take a look at wherever, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I would not be surprised.
Now I understand with Gallagher, with Chalobah, we told them leave and they just didn't want to. But and because you talk about the transfer fee, I don't think we're in a position to be just worrying about transfer fees. I think the worry will be, does anyone cover the wages that Sterling wants covered? Because if I'm Raheem Sterling and I'm earning £325,000 here, and I have a contract for 3 more years, £325,000 every week for 3 more years. Why should I give that up? Even if I'm never in the squad, why should I give that up? So if someone isn't paying me at least close to that, why? Like you can have a go at these guys. You'd be an idiot if you yourself did it any different. I'm just saying. But yeah, no, I do agree with you, Adash. I do agree with you. On this note, I think it's nearly time we wrap this up. Just one last one, just to throw a little bit of transfer news into it as well. Fabrizio Romano has supposedly said, according to Pice, that Chelsea and Atletico Madrid are now working on the structure of the add-ons in the João Felix deal. All parties optimistic. And again, we're so badly trying to get rid of Conor Gallagher that we replaced that we signed Dewsbury Hall to force Gallagher out, and now we're willing to sign João Felix that doesn't fit our squad only to get Gallagher out, when Gallagher is better than João Felix and Dewsbury Hall. And when I say better than João Felix, I don't mean as a player. Sure, he isn't, but as a combination of usefulness. Make of that what you will. But I think it's about time we wrap this up. Adash, kind of final thoughts on a day like today where we lose 2-0, but play okay?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say remember the context, remember where we are in the season, which is that we're 90 minutes into the season. So keep that in mind. Don't lose your head. And hopefully we see things going upwards, because from last season, surely things can't go further downwards. So we're just hoping that we can kind of be on an upward trajectory, support the players, support the team. Hopefully Winstanley and Stewart can do something other than what they've done so far, just being complete idiots, and actually do something useful in the transfer market. Selling players wise, just to get our squad complete. Like this Raheem Sterling thing, I think is a perfect example where we have all these players, and just because we have these players, having too many is also a big issue, because this causes issues and this causes people to talk, which I think is just an additional distraction that needs to get sorted out in the next 2 weeks before the transfer window closes. But yeah, excited. All things considered.
2 weeks until the transfer window does close, and we have so many players still to get rid of. I don't think they're going to achieve it. And I think at the end we're going to sit there with a silly squad and a lot of players that shouldn't be there in the under-21 squad. But yeah, at the end of the day, like I said earlier already, I'm a little bit surprised by the amount of negativity that this game and result has got. Is it great? Would have wanted to get a point or 3, obviously. But in a way, maybe, like I said, maybe I was just much more pessimistic than a lot of others going into it. But I expected worse. I expected quite a bit worse. And it wasn't quite a bit worse. So, that is something. And one little thing, shout out to the Stamford Bridge pitch guy. I forgot the
groundsman.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, groundsman. There you go. Who we got from Real Madrid, and also who used to be at Arsenal in the past. Stamford Bridge, looking spectacular today. So well done, that guy. At least if we don't sign any good players, at least we sign the best groundsman. At least it's something. You know what I mean? I would have rather had, I don't know, Mbappe and instead of Dewsbury Hall and no new groundsman. But better than nothing, I suppose. Better than nothing. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, it's about time we wrap this one up. So if you have tuned in all this time, I appreciate you very, very much. Subscribe if you haven't done so just yet. Hit that like button on your way out. That would really help me out. Spread the streams out to more people, so it would be massively appreciated. Check out Adash. His Twitter, you can see it down on screen and link down in the description below. If you haven't done so yet, like I say, like and subscribe. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys for watching. Upwards and onwards. Up the Chelsea. And I will see you next time.